Hello there, and welcome to a new build for Age of Wonders 4, which utilizes morale destruction and the dark culture. Somebody in the comment section ordered this, and wow, this was a tough one to get it working. But at the end of the day, I'm very happy with it, and it's time to share. It's one of those builds that starts out a little bit weaker, so I don't see it as one of the most powerful builds because it has kind of a power curve that doesn't start too powerful, but the mid and late game of this one is pretty obscene. Let's get started. So, first up, I took here, cultural-wise, Ritual Cannibals and Gifted Casters. Gifted Casters is one that I liked for this build because it gave me a lot of battlefield spell capabilities without having to ever worry about mana. The build itself is quite mana hungry because it utilizes a lot of things, so this one came quite handy for me. I think this is interchangeable. Ritual Cannibals is the same venue. It gives us not only self-support via corpse eating, it also gives us extra mana and food, which makes our cities grow faster, which is personally something that I love for builds like these. But the main aspect here is really the mana and the self-support of our troops. Cultural trait-wise, I went for a combination of Nightmare Mounds and Ceaseless Cacophony. This is a bit of an odd one, because Nightmare Mounds don't really synergize that well into the dark culture, or so I thought at first. You can definitely go for a different combination there. The My personal favorite is the unbearable stench trait if you want to go for a different way. But the Nightmare Mounts, hear me out on that one. We're not playing too much with the intimidating aura on this one. But the Vicious Killer trait is one that I found refreshingly powerful on these. Either way, I'm getting ahead of myself. Interchange that with something else, because this is more of a gimmicky choice, but I like it. So, well, I mean, morale destroying, dark culture, nightmare riding people, you see. But yeah, I think the stench trait would be more effective if you're out for the numbers. Tomes. So, starting out with Zeal to get herself some punch. This build has an Order Shadow combination, which is always one of my favorites for the Dark Ones, because it gives us not only powerful troops, Legion of Zeal gives us really some smack, in combination with Inspiring Chant, we have high morale, high strength, good stuff. It also gives us access to Order Imperium skills. We also gain Condemnation, summon Zealot for some cheap fillers for our troops, and Fanatical Workforce to get some stuff done. It's a real good and well-rounded combination. I also love that the Circle of Zealotry is capable of boosting your city stability. The other tier 1 that I picked up was Tome of Faith. This is the one where I feel like if you wanted to, you could exchange that. But I feel like Tome of Faith has an innate high synergy with the dark culture, with their own lack of a cultural supporter. You gain the chaplains, which have a good burst heal, a bless, which boosts one target's damage pretty decently, and they also gain via Staves of Mending the Mending Touch ability, which is a good touch heal. At the end of the day, chaplains can heal up to 2 targets, have a pretty decent spiritual attack there, and also gain, well, they're your standard backliner for this build, and they do a pretty decent job. I also enjoy having Faithful Whispers, because that makes free cities more eager to listen to you, and we have Abbeys, which allows us to power play knowledge a little bit more. You guys know me. I think knowledge is one of the most powerful income things of this game, because it's hard to acquire and it speeds you up decently. The convent is a bit of a lost cause on this build because dark culture tends to have a little bit of a lower stability, so don't lean too much on that. I didn't really make it work. Sometimes you might get off lucky when you have, for example, a governor and a special resource combination that ends up with a high city stability. You can reap some rewards out of that, but most of the time this remains a pipe dream. We're here for the Staves of Mending, the Chaplain, the Faithful Whispers. Army heal can be quite handy, but I think this trio plus the Abbey is really the best of it. So tier 2 comes and we are up for the Tome of the Doom Herald. This is really the bread and butter tome. This is where this build gets really kicking into gears, but oh boy, I was surprised how much it does. It's a combination of joy siphoners, which will steal the enemy's morale per hit. We have a lot of chain attackers, so units with a lot of attacks per turn are here really good, although increased effects for non-repeating attacks. But I felt like 3 attacks are always worth more than a singular attack. But either way, we are making good use of this. This is our main element. We also use cruel weaponry from here on, which is just also excellent because it is a 30% damage bonus for our frontliners, and you feel that. We also gain the Banshee, which is an excellent backliner. She deals a lot of damage when the enemy's morale suffers, but most of the time you want these to just pop in and explode. This is the main thing that you want to do with these. Mind you though, we're not playing Necromancers, so you are not that easy to replace them, re-summon them on the battlefields. Doom Depth Trench is amazing for this build out of 2 reasons. For one, it gives a hefty income. The other thing is, since we are playing Dark, minus city stability doesn't hurt us as much, and since we are also playing Dark and Evil, we can really get some huge payoff out of this one, so use it. As soon as you have it, try to crank it into every city that you have. It's so much mana knowledge. You don't want to miss out on that. Prelude of Doom and Cause Despair are morale destroyers that are available for us, and since we have that gifted casters thing going, we are out for spamming spells, and I felt like this does a really excellent job at this. The other tier 2 that we're picking up is Mayhem. So this does 2 things for us. For one, it gets us to the 3 Chaos Affinity mark together with our Empire Ritualistic Cannibals thing. And the other thing it gives us Mark of Misfortune. We're already playing with the Cacophony thing, so this really starts to rack up now. Well, backliners don't do that much damage, but they do this debuff the enemy massively, which results into less damage into a front line. So this is sort of a support thing at the end of the day. The gremlins are excellent. You have a flexible skirmisher available that can do a wonderful ranged attack each turn that cancels defense modes and flips the enemy on their backsides, so you can flank them easily. It's lovely. You also gain the ability to spam infestations with this spell, which is also amazing for every order build, so it's a really, really cool one. And we gain Curse of Misfortune and Sow Confusion to spread some misfortune. We're utilizing all that when we are hitting tier 3. So tier 3 comes, and the first thing we're picking up is Great Transformation. So it's sort of a backdoor necromancy thing here. We don't do that much necromancy, but I realized that Whiteborn is amazing for this culture and this build in general. We gain life stealing, so on top of the Call of the Weak that the Dark Culture already has, healing off of weakened targets in case you don't know, we also gain life steal. This is just really great. Fetid Legion also gives us weakening aura, so we are no longer relying on spreading weakening out of our backline, which is current the default state. All of the ranged attacks of a Dark Culture weaken. So this one picks up the weakening aura, and we now have it on our front line, which is amazing. I really like that. So this is the main takeaway. Fetid Legion and Whiteborn, these are the 2 main things that we want. But I realized Desecrate Structure, Soul Income, not bad. Domain of Death, city stability bonus, so eventually those convents will get maybe useful, depends on the city size that is, and Bone Dragon Reanimation. If you have the souls to spend, this can be really, really fun, because you get some cheap tier 4 units just by beating enemies. So, but don't get me wrong, Great Transformation's main takeaway for us here is to bolster our front lines. This is what we want. I do like the fact, though, that we get some extra income in Sorums via city stability, and Desecrate Structure allows you to get those souls together for Whiteborn. Also, it will be used later when we are picking up Tome of the Reaper, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The other tier 3 for this build is then Pandemonium, because, you know, we are doing so many things that synergize into this tome that I couldn't stop myself from picking this up. Havoc Magic makes our backline mages now finally do a lot of negative status effects. I'd advise you to skip out on the tier 1 archers eventually completely, because that's just better. We also gain Vessels of Chaos, which makes everybody now hit by 30% harder, because, you know, we're racking up negative status effects to no end. We also gain Infectious Insanity, which can take out entire rosters via this wonderful ability. Banners, 6 enemies, I mean. Mass Hysteria is also really cool. And the Chaos Eater never grows old. We have a lot of payoff out of this. Frontline battle mages they are, and they synergize darned well into this build. For the tier 4, I'd really recommend to pick up the Tome of the Reaper, because we already have a soul income that we don't really use except for Bone Dragons. We now gain the ability to summon Reapers out of that, which are excellent tier 5 units. I really like that one. We also can spend our souls into Marked for Death, which is also a massive spell, so if you don't have anything to summon, you can also utilize it for this. It's just a wonderful nuke that just kills people. And it also destroys morale, so it plays into the meme of the build. We also gain greater reanimation, which is pretty cool, because that means we have now the ability to resurrect undead people, because, you know, everybody in your army is undead, so you can now resurrect people. It's pretty good. Soul Siphons and Harvest Population gives us more soul income for more Reapers. I like that. So if you have Ways of War unlocked, I'd advise now to reach out for the Tome of Calamity, because this gives us not only wonderful Calamity Dragons to summon, Accursed Projectiles is a wonderful power-up for all of your backliners. Ghostfire is a form of burning that doesn't counteract Frozen, so that's a good one. Accursed Armus is a good thing for a build, and everything else can be used here well too. If you don't have Ways of War though, which might happen, which is a shame, it's an excellent DLC, but, you know, sometimes things happen, you are well off with Oblivion into Eternal Lord as well. Oblivion is also a really good tome that offers you the Living Fog, which is a really great frontline fighter that is just nasty bad news to be just in their vicinity. It's also a good tome, but I would personally always recommend Calamity over that, because this tome is just loaded, you know. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the roster and the strategy. You are starting off with Dark Warriors and Pursuers. The Dark Warrior is your run-of-the-mill Shock Warrior, and don't worry if they die. They will be replaced by this build, and they are the only real obsolete part of your army eventually. And I mean really obsolete, because the Dark Knights pretty much replaced them entirely. We have also Pursuers, and this build they're riding Nightmares. So, you see, Intimidating Aura is not really of that much of a good use for these, because you don't want enemies adjacent to your archers, duh. But they have, and that's what I found quite interesting, now the Vicious Kill attribute, which means if they get a last hit on the enemy, they shave off morale of the enemy. I was mind blown when I saw this. So, for this build, ideally, if you can, try to last it with the Pursuers. This is more of an early game thing. Later down the road, you will not need that anymore, because you have more than enough sources of morale destruction. But early game, you can use this effect, and it's more powerful than I thought. You just have to play along with it. Yeah, now you know it. So this is how we play with the Nightmares first, and then later down the road, we're combining these Nightmares into the Dark Knights. But, well, today I'm getting ahead of myself a lot. So, Outriders, they are your scouts. They have universal camouflage, basically. They are camouflaged in forests, mountains, and swamps. So they can be stealthy, but that's about it. You don't have much more to say about these. Print a few. Tier 2 comes with the troops that we want. The Night Guard is our bread and butter frontliner. These guys are hard to kill, they strike back quite hard if they get poked, and they have the Dark Stalwart trait, which means they destroy the enemy's defenses by just standing in front of them. So altogether, these are the people that we use to shave down the enemy's morale once we have Joy Siphoners unlocked. Before that phase, these guys are really good at just holding the line and hurting a lot, or taking down big targets with their pole arm ability. Both are really good, and they are best served as a complement together with Shock Warriors. So early on, you will rely on Dark Warriors, and then you will mix it with Dark Knights. The Warlock comes in as our standard backliner for the mid and late game. We don't have that much interaction with battle mages up front, but as soon as tier 2 and tier 3 come into play, we gain more and more value out of these. These guys are here to debuff the enemy or press down a Sundering Curse on the enemy to soften up the big targets or pre-nuke them. Warlocks have therefore only a low to intermediate damage output, but they matter a lot to enable the other people. Their main takeaway is that they have a huge range on the Sundering Curse, which always hits, so you have really the ability to nuke down somebody quite persistently. Mind you, you can repeat that. 2 or 3 of these things will shave off most of the defenses that somebody has, so killing off somebody after 2 Sundering Curses isn't that hard. So these guys have way more utility compared to your Pursuers, and therefore should be replaced bit by bit. The Chapline, like I said, is your standard backline supporter for this build. They heal, they bless, and they stand in the backline to heal people more, and when they have to stand in the backline, you use that defense mode warding as well, because that boosts up the defenses for your front lines as well. This is really important for this build, because we don't rock too many enchantments to boost up our defenses and whatnot. We're mostly relying on getting hurt and healing ourselves afterwards up. But if we get destroyed in one turn, we can't do so, and that helps. Because we don't have shield troops, it's really important to press that out. The warding does not only increase magic resistance, but also physical resistance. Alright, this is one of the most important roles of these, so you'll need a few of the chaplains. 4 to 5 on an army are not too much. At least 4 I'd recommend. And then we got the Dark Knight. So these guys hit like a truck, and they also have this wonderful Dark Surge ability. Double damage to units with negative status effects. You see, we have that scheme running with all the negative status effects, so we can deal a lot of damage if these guys are allowed to be parked in front of a troop. Since we also have that whole Ceaseless Cacophony intimidating aura thing running, these guys are really uncomfortable to be not killed. But, you know, shock troops that they die relatively easy, so you need to take care of them. But they deal a ton of damage, and if you can position them well, yeah, they are really, really brutal. I can't put it into different words. So that's the main roster that we're using. The Banshees are a complement to your Warlocks. They're more of a frontline battle mage, just like the Chaos Eater later down, the Chaos Eaters later down the road. So when it comes down to battlefield magic, we have a few options. Ice Shackles is very early on something you should really spam. I really want to point out that this build wants to cast spells a lot, and Inspiring Chant later becomes your bread and butter spell to just buff the hell out of your army. You get so much power out of your entire army due to the Army of Seal and Inspiring Chant combo. We can also debuff the enemy quite decently later, but you'll be busy quite a lot with Inspiring Chants. With the hero choice, I went down for a Eldritch Sovereign. If you can have them, they're really, really good, as Eldritch Sovereigns have a good mix of utility. They are really good at disabling people, and keeping enemies spinning dizzy is really, really a good way of getting through your relatively weak early game. And the other way that I would see through this would be also either a champion or a wizard king. This build can utilize many ways. Champion would be useful due to the command, which is really powerful for this build. I have a few heroes here I was lucky, and I got through events, a couple of people with command, and I was so surprised how powerful it was, especially for this build, because you just have a lot of Alpha Strike, and Command amplifies that. And the Wizard King is really powerful due to the Overchannel ability, which just gives you more spells per turn, which is also massive. So I was quite surprised to see that this build is very compatible with many different leaders. I just want to stress out here on the signature skill table, whenever one of your heroes hits level 8, don't sleep on Unholy Leader for this build, since eventually you're using mostly Dark Troops converted into Whiteborn. This pays off a ton. Just saying. Apart from that, I enjoyed ritualists, but who doesn't? As they complement or support weakness quite a lot. I was using a restore build. You could use a wild growth build. You can also rock a raise on dead build. Yeah, it's just ritualists are overall quite overpowered these days, and I find them extremely well fitting for this build anyway, because any extra healer lets you save a chaplain in your army and gets you more offensive power, because chaplains are really a downgrade on your offensive power, mind you that. All right, I would say that's this part. And when it comes down to your play style, you really should try to keep yourself safe early on, because before you hit tier 2, well, Legion of Zeal is good at clearing a map. It's one of those tomes that really gets the map cleared quickly, but you need that Joy Siphonous interaction with cool weapons to the very least to have some serious oomph on the table when it comes down to buffed up enemies like other Godier or city states. That's something that I really realized, and where I must say this is more of a theme build than an overpowered build. But it's really dancing on the line, because I realized the more I got deeper into the synergy of morale destruction, support, and the dark culture's innate abilities that I want to point out here another time. Call of the Week was a much more powerful fit into this whole morale destruction scheme than I expected. Mostly because, for one, you have an overall decent damage, because those 20% extra on weakened units, you really feel them all over the board. And that extra heal each turn makes your units very resilient and gives you that time as you need to wear down the enemy decently. And also the nightmares. Once I realized that giving the last hit to my archers destroys the enemy's morale, I realized that this was opening up quite some options. So overall, whatever troops you can get on the nightmares, these are good for you. Which brings me to the next point, Imperium skills. This build double dips into chaos and order, which means you get the best of both worlds in terms of infestation destruction. You're really good at making friends with destroying infestations. You also use the tome that creates infestations. Really good stuff. Really, really good stuff on that end. You also can summon Whispering Stones and use All-Seeing. So we have a lot of summoning Whispering Stone action. So altogether, you're really good at making friends on the free cities, which brings me to the Rally of the Lieges. Rally of the Lieges allows you to draft all manner of different things. And I realized on my experiments with this build that whenever you can get yourself some interesting unit on a nightmare, like feudals have tier 2 shields on mounts. Sometimes you can get lucky with the drafts. Sometimes, most of the time, you don't, because the mount is only on your race. But sometimes you get lucky with other things that do a decent job on your build. Sometimes I had comparable things, whatever. What I'm trying to get down to is when you find something that plays into your morale destruction, tankiness, frontline, sustainy thing, play it out. It's really, really nice to have access to a wide pool of different options. Not all dark builds have that. And last but not least, I want to point here on Brand of Wrath. It's an extremely important spell to have. Without it, your summoned troops will really suffer, and your chaplains won't have Call of the Week. But overall, when you hire from outside sources out of your roster, this spell is mandatory. Extremely important. We don't have that many unit enchantments, which gives you the freedom to spam as much as I keep emphasizing here. So yeah, summarized. Last thing that I want to talk about is spam those buildings that give knowledge. This build has a good knowledge capability, and spamming out the abbeys as early on as possible is also a really, really good power game. Doom Depth Trench and Abbey give you a lot of knowledge production quite quickly. You have early access on these buildings, so use it on those cities which have the room for that to speed up your progress quite a lot. And now the last thing, A war with a free city is always a good thing for this build because you have super early access to knowledge extraction. So it's pretty good for you to have people that send you regularly war parties. You do profit a lot out of warfare due to this. So enjoy. It's a really fun build that comes into gear a little bit too late for my taste. This is mostly because morale destruction is a mechanic that is not really that much of a thing that you can focus on the dark culture, because we don't have that many things that are good for that. And the worst case here is that I feel like the game lacks a few tools in the earlier stages. Like there's nothing in the tier 1 area that I could do to destroy the enemy's morale at any point. We are only starting that stuff on the tier 2s, and that makes this whole strategy a little bit slow, but I felt like with the order elements I had a good thing that makes us early on fast, boosts up during all the stages of the game, and gives you a nice knowledge and vassal economy. I hope you like it. Leave me a comment, leave me a like, leave me a subscribe. Consider checking out the description box and leave me more recommendations of builds that you want to see, because I love hearing back from you. Many thanks to all of you supporting the channel, and many thanks to you for watching this video. I love doing these, and you guys are awesome for being so positive and such a friendly crowd. So let's keep it going, and have a nice day, all of you.